Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, MF Ghost, Season 3.
Yep, MF Ghost, Season 3, Episode 11. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. It's Age. We're back for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And well, in short, if you guys didn't watch the first two videos this week, Age's internet decided that his upload needed to be from 1995 for a couple weeks, and ISP was being a giant nerd, as most ISPs usually are, so it's kind of impossible to record with no upload, because then there'd be no visual, and even the audio was... I could understand about 30% of the stuff that he ever tried to say when we were in comms, so...
Yeah, according to Spectrum, nothing is wrong with having 300 kilobyte upload.
Absolutely not. So, yeah, but you have a plan to do catch-up for the spring season when we finish up these shows next week, which I guess we're doing a double feature of Fire Force to wrap that up, and I thought MF Ghost was 12 episodes. It is not, it's 13, so you guys will be getting both MF Ghosts next week to wrap up as well, and then we'll be doing Double Slime and Double ReZero until the summer season, because of things in the schedule, and like JoJo's not coming back until fall after one episode, and yeah, it was going to be a down season anyway, regardless, based on scheduling and what's releasing, so yeah, it could have been worse somehow, so cross our fingers that we don't have any other problems. But as for MF Ghost, I don't remember what happened last time. I legit don't remember. We had the qualifying, it finished. I think the race started? Did the race start? I don't remember. The still from last time is the sheet of how the qualifying ended. So yeah. I think the race is going to start this time.
I don't remember if the race actually started, but yeah, qualifiers were over, and we got the final lineup of who placed where, and Tani or whatever was the one who got knocked out by
Emma being
Emma.
Yeah. So whatever. We're close to the beginning of the race. I vaguely remember them like lined up, and they were like, on the like entry section of the race. So yeah, I don't know. This is like we've seen before. The MF Ghost has always done this with now that it's 3 episodes, it'll be interesting to see how much of the race we get here at the end of the season, because the next season is being titled the final season, when we pointed out at the midpoint of this season it was about halfway through the source material. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm up for the race. This should be fun. It's one of the longer races based on what we saw, so maybe we'll get like half the race in these like last 3 episodes, and then the last quarter or half of the race at the beginning of next season, because I don't think they're going to finish the race in these 3 episodes. Usually our race is 4 to 5 episodes, so yeah. Anyway, that being said, people on Patreon, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction. Check that out over on Patreon, link down in the description if you guys want to see that. It's completely free. And we'll see everybody else for the discussion and review on YouTube afterwards. So here goes something. Well, alright, then there you guys have it. What a twist. We got some stuff to talk about in this one. There was a lot to talk about during it too, but we still don't know what's up with Ren's mom. But she's going to stick around and watch the race a little bit longer, because their kids, plural, meaning Age just mentioned right before the cut here, was yes, imagine being accepted into the family before you're even officially dating.
Yeah, so when the in-laws have already accepted you into the family and you haven't even started dating yet.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue, friends of the family, that kind of thing, like seeing relationships like that. One of my buddies is like, I grew up with him. My parents were like second parents to him, and vice versa, that kind of thing. But it's
I know. We already have established that they are pretty close in general. So like, we don't really know their actual relation to Kanata's parents, just that they were apparently close with Kanata's parents, and that's why he came here specifically when he was looking for his dad.
Yeah. So at some point, I hope we get what her aversion is. It'd be nice, because it's just been kind of there since season 1. And it doesn't even have to be super amazing. Just like the husband saying like, honey, you really need to get over blankety blank, and just
And presumably she saw a crash or something
Yeah.
that gave her like mental scarring.
yeah, something. But either way, so this was unexpected. So as this was occurring during the live reaction, if you guys didn't see it, generally speaking, I'd say 99% of the time, in any kind of circuit race that's like this, if you've watched any longer course racing where, there's the odds of there being a car coming constantly in a section of a track, like not on an oval or something where, it's like NASCAR or F1 where they're on like an oval. There are spot cautions on road courses like this where, at, reasonable intervals, and we saw it in season 1 where they had like a guy there, like, he waved Ishigami and like, hey, yeah, you can come now because it was radioed in or whatever. There are going to be spot cautions. You see it in Supercross too, in motorcycle racing as well. Whatever, it doesn't matter, any kind of racing, where if somebody spins out in this case and they're totally fine, it's not a crash like here that we see, there'd be like a guy that'd be waving like a spot caution flag, and then he'd be standing there and be like, he'd be on the radio and be like, okay, man, you can tell them to go, it's clear for the next 2 minutes or a minute or however long, plenty of time for them to turn and go. So in this case, what usually would have happened, and I mentioned it during the live reaction, was all 3 of them are going to be in dead last. So generally speaking, what would have happened would be, Sawatari would take off, then Kaneda, then Beckenbauer, in the order of how they're positioned, because usually they let the guy that's farthest back come around to make it as safe as possible, as opposed to letting the guy in front go. That's generally how it goes. But in this case, Kaneda and Beckenbauer, and keep in mind, this all happened in about 3 seconds. Sawatari spins out, they come to a stop at this corner, half of the field passes them, and from where Moriboshi was, now that he's in first, to right in front of Kitahara was 8 vehicles, right? So at most, at those speeds, that is going to be like 3 seconds. Okay? So Kaneda seeing the gap between Kitahara and whoever was in front of her, and then Beckenbauer, like, kind of looking at him like, hey, do you see this, right? And they both go. That is an insane move to pull, because, Kitahara is probably going at least, 60, 70 miles an hour in that section. You know what I mean? So pulling out in front of that from a dead stop. And as All Might's character points out, they were able to do that because they were able to rev their engine higher with a clutch because of the pedal system, meaning if your engine is revved higher and you let go of the clutch, you've already built up enough RPM to it's kind of like a slot car. The second Kaneda started going, he was probably at 35 miles an hour and then 50 miles an hour in under like, a quarter of a second. You know what I mean? Based on that kind of thing. So that is what it is. They had enough room. It was ballsy as hell. And as the announcer points out, they didn't even wait for the tower. And knowing, the Takahashi brothers, they'd probably look at that and go, nobody got hurt. Fuck it. You know what I mean? If Kitahara had slammed into Beckenbauer, then there probably would have been some penalties. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like All Might's character mentioned, like they probably won't be penalized for it because it was pulled off perfectly fine. There was no real problem.
Yeah. So that was something just that's like absolutely insane to do. But well, as he pointed out, it was flawlessly executed. And if something is flawlessly executed, it's perfectly fine and safe. You know what I mean? Technically unsafe, but also technically not unsafe if both drivers execute flawlessly, and they did. So, that that is what it is.
Beckenbauer spooked Kitahara quite a bit, but like she didn't actually get close to actually hitting him or anything.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, he's all of a sudden in my face. Full drafting range. And we see what she did with that during the rest of the course of the lap and going into the second lap was, it's been, alluded to this whole time that, Nozomi is far more talented than her brother, which, let's not sell her brother short. He's still in the godly 15, which, once again, MFG has several hundred drivers trying to get into everything, every season. So it's not like there's 15 that get in and there's only like 20 of them. You know what I mean? So you're still a pretty good driver. But I've mentioned this before, like when you get into the professional levels, you look at, like, say, I don't know, anybody who watched like the Bulls play in the 90s, you could look at Michael Jordan and be like, yeah, that's Michael Jordan. But Steve Kerr was also a professional and on the Bulls at the time. You know what I mean? A three-point shooter. Not the caliber of Michael Jordan, still a professional. But when you get into the pros, there are still tiers of, quality, even if everybody's a professional. You know what I mean? So in these 15 drivers, you can see the disparity between the top 3 drivers and everybody behind them. You know what I mean? And the tiers of drivers and their capabilities and stuff like that. So that is...
Yeah, I mean, once again, way establishing back at the very beginning of the series, even just qualifying in the top 15 is enough to basically make your racing career in Japan from there on.
Yeah, because let's be real here, and we'll get to the Sawatari money stuff right after this because it's kind of good segue. But even if there's like massive inflation in like their near future that they're in, the money that these guys are making, as long as you're not dumb, you're set for life. If you raced in MFG for like 5 years, you know what I mean? Even less if you win a lot, you know what I mean? And you like use that money for real estate or, proper investing, what have you. You know what I mean? They're not making chump change. You know what I mean? Kaneda made $100,000 equivalent in the last race because of his overtakes, because each overtake is worth pretty much 10 grand. So even in the near future, 10 grand is still, while it's not a lot of money, like over the course of a year, 10 grand in one day is a lot. You know what I mean? $100,000 in the near future in one day is a ton. You know what I mean? If you're making 6 figures in one day, that's more than most people make in multiple years. You know what I mean? If you make 10 grand in a day for one overtake, let's say in this case, and that was all the money you made in that race randomly, that's more than most people make in like 3 to 4 months. You know what I mean? So it's not chump
again, that's just talking overtakes. It's not talking the actual money they make off the race itself.
Yeah. So either way, that is what it is. But during this whole section here, when we had, Sawatari talking to himself, I guess it has to be speculated that he wanted to potentially make this race as interesting as possible by what's that super hyper gamer term? Inting yourself, right? He wanted to int all 3 of them so that they would have to come from the back, and they screwed him by getting into the mid pack instead. So
yeah, he's got a bone to pick with Beckenbauer at this point. We saw that with the fact that he deliberately, basically sabotaged Beckenbauer's qualifiers, just specifically targeting him. And then now he throws the starting position to force Beckenbauer and Kanata as a result, though he doesn't seem to have as much of an issue with Kanata.
He did until Kanata remembered who he was, and then he was like, oh, he remembered who I am. So he's not an asshole. Which, again, not remembering somebody that you barely associated yourself with isn't really being an asshole. It's like, but once again, Kanata has photographic memory. So we saw that after the previous race where, he was going to be all smug and like, I bet this asshole doesn't remember me. It's like, oh my God, he remembers me. He's a cool guy. You know what I mean? So,
but either way, yeah, this whole move definitely seems to be just, I'm going to deliberately throw my lead just to screw over Beckenbauer as much as I can and then rake in as much money from overtakes as I can.
Right, which it was pointed out last time that Kanada set the record for most overtakes in a race. So even if Sawatari, say, claws his way back to third, that's going to be like 4 more overtakes than Kaneda made in the previous race, something like that. So he would set like a massive record, and if he passes like 12 cars, that's $120,000.
In addition to third place money.
In addition to third place money, so he's already made $10,000 by passing Yashio. You know what I mean? That's 10 grand right there. Boom. So he does mention that it's like he'll buy his girlfriend whatever she wants, that kind of thing. It's like, I mean, with one overtake, I mean, I'd hope you could buy her pretty much almost everything that she wants with 10 grand. I mean, she's a high school student.
Yeah, she's a high school student. It's not like she can have that expensive of tastes.
Yeah, so
especially since, like, once again, we seem to be leading towards like this relationship between them actually being serious for once.
Yeah, so all that relationship stuff that we talked about, the parabola of mystery potential with Ren and all that stuff, it might not happen. Who knows? Because they've actually played this girl up as to she actually cares about him. She would this is something that I've talked about with relationships and stuff like that, and we talked about in this series too, and it's worth mentioning again because this is her. If she didn't actually care about him, she would, even if she had zero interest in racing at all, the fact that she is watching it with the potential to have zero interest in racing because it's him tells a lot for her character, because she's supporting him even if she doesn't like what he's doing. You know what I mean? And we talked about that with, like, you know, freaking Takahashi in Initial D and how he fucked up the base with that one girl. You know what I mean? That was like, I'm cool with just watching, you know, just no big deal. But, you know, there are plenty of people who, if she just wanted the perks of dating him, she probably, and she didn't care about MFG or racing at all, she wouldn't be watching. She wouldn't be cutting class to watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she wouldn't be cutting class to watch him and being nearly as supportive to him as she is if she was just in it for dating the hot famous MFG driver.
Yeah, pretty much. She wouldn't be watching it all. It would just be like, you know, call me after the race is over. You know, she might check like the results, that kind of thing. She might get pinged like on an app that says, you know, here are the results of the race, and then, oh, you didn't win. Well, F you. You know what I mean? There's plenty of relationships out there like that. So I think there might be something that is just based on the context clues that have been given about them recently in the very minimal screen time that they've been given, obviously, because they're not main characters. Well, Saratari is a more main character, obviously, but his girlfriend's not. But just everything that we've got on this, you know, even in the bare minimum voice lines that she got here, she's cutting class potentially. She's at school, regardless. She's watching the race, and she was even observant enough in their date, the previous date, to notice that he was, you know, not eating. There was something wrong. You know, he was anxious. If she didn't care, she wouldn't notice those things. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, which he mentions the whole, like, weight off of his shoulders, which I interpret as he's been super anxious the last couple of days because he's been planning to do this, and he knows it's super dangerous and risky to fake a crash.
Yeah. And from everything that the announcers point out and stuff like that, they are under the impression that he got overconfident and just spun out. It happens. You know what I mean? Even the best can spin out sometimes because of random stuff. I was pointing out during the live reaction that maybe because it's different than his qualifying setup, that's what happened. But with more context from the episode, it definitely seems like he absolutely did it on purpose to quote-unquote int all three of them. More Beckenbauer than Kaneda, obviously. Kaneda is kind of a, you know, a collateral damage kind of situation potentially, but they were able to, you know, minimize the damage, and, you know, now Sawatari has the chance to make hundreds of thousands of dollars by overtaking all of the guys from the back. You know what I mean? I don't see him not getting back to the top 5. You know what I mean? There's
yeah, especially, you know, pulling it literally on, like, the first major thing of the first lap, so he's got plenty of time to do it.
Yeah. So, either way, the other major stuff that came out of this was Moriboshi freaking out about being in first place and the Gunma Pride stuff and whatnot. Emma's internal monologue. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Emma's just taking it. Emma's just taking it easy and letting Moriboshi freak himself out over the fact that, once again, all he trained for going into this race was to try to overtake Kanata. But now he's not getting a chance to overtake Kanata, and he has no idea what the hell he's doing.
And he's not going to get a chance to overtake Kanata, because let's be real, you know, the triple power train is probably going to fight their way all the way back up to the front. You know what I mean? If they want to do something with Kitahara's character, and it seems like they are, I don't like the option of her not drafting her way all the way to the front with these two. You know what I mean? I don't like her getting cut out at some point. You know what I mean?
She might get cut out on like the jump or something at some point. Like she might take it wrong. But I feel like the most likely thing is going to be that she is going to ride along in the train up to the point where she eventually gets third. But then once they break off and start battling each other, she's going to get kind of left high and dry and going to eventually get overtaken by like Emma and potentially Sawatari.
Yeah.
And she'll probably place like 6th or 7th in the end.
Yeah, something like that. But I think just for her character and everything they've tried to do for her, just as like a secondary character, it'd be neat to see her seize this opportunity, like, you know, Sato, All Might's character, is pointing out, like, you know, she's taking advantage of the situation. And as we pointed out during this, she's in the smallest car in this section, barring her brother, who's just going to be bringing up the rear, so he has nothing to do with the slipstream. So her being the tail of the slipstream of Kanata and Beckenbauer means that nobody's really going to be able to latch onto her as well as she can latch onto Beckenbauer, so they're just going to pull them. You know what I mean? So her being the tail is detrimental to the guy in the Lambo here, the guy in the NSX, because they're in big blocky vehicles for the most part. Yes, they're still aerodynamic, obviously, but compared to her car, they're not. They're much bigger, so they're going to get less, you know, slipstream off of her vehicle because it's smaller. So they're not going to be able to keep up with her. So it will be interesting to see how far they ride her to the top, praising First Boom. You know what I mean? Like, I assume that it'll be something like what Age said. Maybe they'll like get to Emma or something, and then Emma won't let her pass her or something. Something will happen, and she'll like force it or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she might not make it all the way to third, like I was saying, but she's probably gonna be able to ride this to where she's at least in like up there around the top 5, and then either Emma or Sawatari is going to either prevent her from breaking into the top 5, or if she does manage to break into the top 5, they're going to kick her out of the top 5 by the time the race is over.
Yeah. So it'll be kind of like, you know, seizing the moment, the opportunity for what it is in the early laps, and like ride that high of, you know, she's gonna get an overtake bonus, a massive one. You know what I mean? She's already gotten 2. You know what I mean? So that's pretty big for her. If she follows them to the top, she'll pass at least 7 or 8 vehicles. You know what I mean? So that'll be a huge payday for her, an overtake bonus. So it'll probably be a big deal for her. But yeah, it'll be kind of neat to see them do something else with her character, because they kind of introduced her as like a love rival, that kind of thing. She gave Kanata the other charm at the same time that Rin did thing. But it was always alluded to that she was better than her brother by a reasonable margin, and she is now proving it with her, you know, taking advantage of this situation.
Yeah, it was alluded to that she was better in the first place, but then she's also been, you know, building up her own confidence and skill over the course of the series, and finally, like, being willing to pull away from the easy thing that they had, where, like, they were never placing high, but they were still consistently staying, you know, in the top 15 and getting top 15 money.
Yeah. So either way, last thing here, the classic idol interviews, which you guys know, if you know me at all, I can't stand journalists because most of them are useless and they ask stupid questions. Journalist asks a stupid question, you should give them a stupid answer. It's that simple. The fact that she just points out, like, I don't know. You asked me a question, and I told you something memorable that happened during break. Yeah, like food poisoning or whatever happened to her, and she ended up, it was terrible, but hey, she lost 4 kilograms, and now she looks even greater than she already did.
Yeah, no, if Kyoko was a Tomodachi, she would have maxed out honesty.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ren gives the answer that we all knew was coming, and well, that's the classic reaction of like, wow, look at that contrast. Can you really be mad about contrast in an idol group? Aren't idol groups supposed to be different? You know what I mean? Isn't it boring if they were all like the same? You guys remember the Spice Girls? They were all different. They even had completely different names explaining what kind of character they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's standard practice when companies form idol groups in the first place, is that they try to keep a diverse group of idols so that way they can hit as many demographics as they can.
Right. And just out of curiosity, are these guys eating slices of tomatoes and corn? What kind of bar side is that? I hope that's some kind of meat and cheese, because it looks like tomatoes and corn.
And it looks like tomatoes and like butter.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
It's probably cheese and pepperoni.
Yeah, something like that. That's like your typical bar food, snack food. But it looks like slices of tomatoes, you guys. I caught that and I was like, what are those guys eating? Doesn't even the stupid little like parsley thing that they put on the end of those plates for like the color or whatever. You guys have ever gotten like wings at a wing place? The little like piece of greenery they put there to like parsley. Even there. So I don't know what was going on with that, but that was something I made like a random mental note of, like, what are these guys eating? There's a random curiosity from this episode. But either way, it was another great episode. I really enjoyed this one. I really hope they do allow Kitahara to shine for a little bit and, get her narrative a little bit more. That'd be cool. But going into the next time, obviously, I think the big thing will be what's going on with these three. The Slipstream trio, and then we'll be getting some of what Sawatari is doing. We'll see every time he passes somebody. This was supposed to be Shun's track, so I hope we get something with him, and then it'll be Moriboshi freaking out at the top and Morema. That's what we'll probably have looking forward to next.
Yeah, I assume we'll get at least some sort of Aiba spotlight in all this, but we haven't gotten any of him whatsoever this episode to really gauge where he might currently be looking to place.
Yeah, he's just sitting in 4th right now, so, and since he doesn't have his rival Sakamoto with him because Sakamoto's way at the back, that's not the narrative that they can push this race, because I don't think Shun's going to fall back to where Sakamoto's at, and I don't think Sakamoto is going to rise to where Shun's at, you know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what they do with his character, because this was supposed to be like his place, like his best place. So.
Yeah, right now the only like character arc that we can push with him currently is the fact that he's formed a rivalry with Kanata off the track.
Yeah.
But Kanata needs to get all the way back up there first before we can push that at all. The only other thing Aiba's got going for him is just that, this is supposed to be his best track of the circuit.
Yep. So yeah, one hell of an episode. Had some twists, had some turns, had some plans, had some madness. Gotta like it. So, anyway, you got anything else, AJ?
I don't think so.
Alrighty then. Well, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube beyond, whoever you're watching, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us here in the dojo for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And this was MF Ghost, Season 3, Episode 11. Once again, this does go to 13 this season, but because we wanted to wrap up everything next week, you'll be getting double MF Ghost next week to wrap up the season. So we'll be wrapping up Fire Force with a double feature and MF Ghost with a double feature. But Frieren ends this week, so that opened up a slot in our recording. So anyway, everybody have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. See you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.